Folks, this weekend, the Paris City Hall is hosting the Maghreb and Middle East Book Fair. The annual exhibition aims to highlight ties that bind people regardless of their geographical, cultural, or historical origins in the Maghreb and in the Middle East. Now, for more on this, we can speak with Lebanese writer Hyam YARED. Thank you very much for joining us here on the program. Now, your work it often focuses on liberty, and particularly women's freedom and how it's impacted by tradition and by societal norms. Now, of course, we've recently seen a movement in the cinematic world, this to strengthen women's rights and end abuses. Of course, this with the hashtag #MeToo movement that's spread far beyond cinema. But focusing on the literary world, what are we seeing there in terms of female empowerment?
Actually, you know, the female status in Lebanon is much taking place through civilian engagement and through literature and writers that step over and next to these civil NGOs that are very sensitive to improve women empowerment. There are many into politics. I'm a member of PEN. I think you know PEN worldwide. There is PEN International, so we have PEN in Lebanon, and we as PEN are very aware of the lack of freedom for women, because as you might don't know, in Lebanon the status of women is very much linked to religious patriarchal laws that rules the personal status of their civilians. So it's a very deep sociological issue to work on the empowerment of women, and of course literature plays a role, and we as PEN are very attentive to the lack of freedom, because there is a lack of memory. No one there and goes through others saying the truth. So everybody is withdrawn into their community, and women are smashed into this situation. So so the place of women is very critical, I think. Like just very few years ago, for example, violence against women can be taken to a civil court. Before, you had to go to religious court. So for me, this is insane. And this is the role that literature and NGOs try to play to change these things.
It's interesting you talked a bit about the role of literature in terms of having people help them to have memory, to just keep the history very close for some perhaps who are not aware or who simply forgot. How important is it also, though, in terms of literature and even just art, to also give a sense of vision of the future and perhaps a path to move forward?
I'll tell you, because I think that the women's status is smashed also by a war, by a constant status of war. And not only women, memory too, because when you have to survive, you don't have time to think, you don't have time to work on your memory. So and on your language. There is no language without memory, and there will not be a status of women without memory. So this is where literature plays a role, because there is no collective memory. No one is allowed or have time to do so, because you have more urgent issue to deal with, like death, like destruction, like. And this is where literature plays a role of individual memory, and that fill up the lack of collective memory. In a way, maybe with more literature, more movies, because as you know, also movies and art and film and cinema plays a role. That's why many are censored in Lebanon too, where freedom of expression have never been so bad, actually, since 2016. So this is very important that we fight, all artists together, to remain and make possible that memory can take, that imagination can take over a lack of memory and tells the truth in a disguised way, maybe, because this is also the role of imagination and this is the role of literature, but at least it restitutes to the society another truth that would not be manipulated by politicians or by communitarism or by interests that finally are not next to civilians.
Indeed, I'd like to ask you, you mentioned then memory or an imagined memory. There is the question of exactly whose memory will be shared. What are we seeing in terms of the leadership in the literary world, in terms of how women are represented in the top levels of publishing houses? How does that impact which stories are told?
That women are in publishing.
Well, are women? Do you believe women are well represented? Yes, no, of course. Do you believe women are well represented in publishing houses, just simply as the bosses of publishing houses?
Yeah, I think they are. I think that when you are into creativity, you have this option. But for me, as a woman, I'm very much concerned by those, speaking is not at ease to anyone. And it's also a privilege sometimes of a minimum of education. But there are, so of course they are there and they have a place, a very important place. But for me, the fight through my literature, through my beliefs for women are also for those who don't dare and speak. So it's not only, but in literature, of course, they are more represented than in any other field, and surely than in politics, because in politics, they disturb, because they want to change things, and things in a patriarchal society are not always welcome to be changed.
Hyam YARED, thank you very much for joining us here on the program. We do appreciate it.